What a pleasure it is to be joined by Norma Brandt. She's the author of a book called Her Crown of Light, if you wanted a subtitle, Unconditional Love. And it, really talks about the question, what tears family members and friends apart and going in different directions? Is it money? Is it infidelity? Is it religion? What is it? And how about the power of unconditional love? Norma, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.
So what did you find? And first of all, this is a very big book, and putting this together, it seems like it was a labor rather of love. Did you feel like that as you were going through and writing this and pulling it together?
Yes, I did. And what I did is I wrote it in 4 parts. And the first one, the first part, I really dedicated it to my daughter, Angela. I shared the idea with her, and then she died. And so in her memory, I wrote it. And the main thing with the first part has to do with confusion. Somebody was supposed to be dead. Oops, they're alive. And it caused a lot of confusion, and it also caused a lot of anger because they wanted more money. They just wanted more money, and found out maybe all that money didn't belong to them. So there was a lot of confusion.
Yeah, I like that theme, the whole idea that there's confusion, because don't you think in life there is confusion and that's part of it?
I really do. And, they say the root of all evil is money, but I don't think that's true. I think it's when we want money that doesn't belong to us. And some of the stepchildren had a little problem with that.
I love that. And you know what? It's interesting because in the chapters, the way you lay it out too, you talk, for example, let's talk about joy to the world. Explain joy to the world to us. That's one of the chapters.
Well, Joshua, they were at a place of meeting different people because Naomi had put on her crown, which is a Santa Lucia crown that has lights in it. And then she goes around to usher in the Christmas season by sharing all of these delicacies. And then they decided that they would sing. And they were singing Christmas songs. Well, Joshua got a little confused, as children do. Well, maybe adults do too. And so he sang, "Joy to the world, joy to the fishies in the deep blue sea." and so there's a child in all of us. And sometimes, even when we're adults, the child comes out. But he was still a child, and he just loved his music.
Yeah, I love that. What a great description. And we're speaking with Norma Brandt. Her book is called Her Crown of Light, really unconditional love. And I'm going to bop around with, like we're doing, and talk about some of these chapters and the purpose of the chapters. And one of them is You've Got Mail. I love that. There was even a movie called You've Got Mail. So explain that to us.
Okay. I'm looking through the book now, and on that, that is when.
Yeah, you've got mail. We all have. It's interesting because mail it conjures up, Norma, a lot of different images. So, physical mail that I think people still want to get, and then messages people receive, and then, of course, email, because we live now in the internet age, and mail can mean so many different things to a lot of different people. As I just said there, whether it's a message somebody's receiving, or the way they're receiving that message, I think.
And on this chapter too, that's where some of the stepchildren realized that Naomi was not dead. She was still alive. And so their whole world is really confused all over again. And it goes back to money. they thought that their dad had all the money, and Naomi had her own money. However, in all the 4 parts of this book, nobody really knows, except Naomi, where she got her money, except that it wasn't from Stanley.
Wow. You know, I in reading the book and looking at the book and talking about money and whatnot, there's a part where you say, "I'll take that check now, June," and that's what Monty says. "Here's a pen. Sign your name on the back of the check and give it to me." And then I think I'd better keep the check for now. After all, I'll need some money for funeral arrangements. I know most of Naomi's close friends have died, but I'm sure her church friends would appreciate a service. So this is an interesting theme that comes up. And as you mentioned, it's weaved throughout it. And what do you think, not what do you think, but what do you hope the readers take away from reading this?
Well, first of all, it's very obvious that June is not in a happy situation in her marriage, and she knows it. And yet, she didn't want the money for herself. She wanted it to honor Naomi, and she wanted to make sure that her last bit on earth was her funeral, and she wanted to honor it. And her husband, he wanted the money, and he wanted out of the marriage, and he wanted to go on with his life in a different way. And so it comes back to that money business all the time.
Boy, yeah, no kidding. It comes back to that money business all the time. I like it. And that's where you start, and that's how you weave it in, as we mentioned, throughout the book. And you talked about your daughter and Angela, and you talked about your daughter dying and what that causes. Do you think that affected how you pulled the book together as you were pulling it together?
You know, it really did. And the funny thing is, after I got through with the first part, the will, then I couldn't put the characters down. I couldn't put the story down because I was still living here on Earth, and I wanted to know what happened next. I wanted to know how their lives were changed, either by getting money or not getting money. And I found that after the anger subsided, people's lives began to be changed because they were looking inside. When I was writing this, I didn't really know exactly how their lives were going to be changed after having money or not having money from Naomi. And I just couldn't stop writing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you couldn't stop writing. And you really couldn't stop writing. And the story is so well written. And you talk about, I love that you said, the characters, because it's like the characters were sort of, you were bringing them to life and they were living through you. And you want to see where that journey goes. And that's part of being really a good writer, that you're letting the character sort of take you on their journey. Did it seem like that as you were pulling it together, as I said? Yeah.
Yes, it did. And thank you for the compliment. One of the things is when you write something, you're drawing from your own experiences too. And even though Joshua, for instance, he was a character in the book, but there were parts of him that belonged to people that I knew. And so I was able to take some of their experiences and then form a new Joshua in the book. And the same with Naomi, and the same with June, all of them. And so I had to be careful not to have somebody come back and say to me, "That's me." No, it's not you. There are parts that are you, just like there are parts of you that are very human. And so I got to talk to a lot of people that thought they were in the book, and oops, they weren't.
Wow. So when you put the book together, finally it's like giving birth, you have the book and you're excited and you tell your friends, and that's funny that people might have seen themselves in the characters, and like you said, you have to tell them that. What was the overall reaction from from the people close to you about your book?
Well, I sent it out to family and friends. I just had it printed locally, you know, and before we put it all together. And I didn't get one bad response. But the one response that kept me going was, I want to know what happens next. And is this person going to be in the next one, or, you know, things like that. So that was refreshing, because then I knew that they not only liked the story, but they could relate to that. And I think sometimes we read books that we can relate to, or that we find some hope, or we find some loving thoughts in there, or something we hadn't thought of.
Yep, I love it. Perfect place to end this. Norma Brandt, what a pleasure talking to you. Her Crown of Light, Unconditional Love. It's just a fabulous, fabulous story. Thanks, Norma.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you.